I hear you now. Yeah.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Welcome everybody. Uh, Here with Jeff. Basis of this discussion is going to be why they went after Brendan Dassey and the steps they took before going after Brendan Dassey. Uh,
Yes.
all starts off with Steven is trying to get bail to get out. And law
Right.
enforcement are well aware of this, including prosecution. And, well, I don't even know where to start.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
we can actually go back all the way to November 6th. That's in my mind. That's when it really starts.
all right.
In his Crivets interview uh, with what the hell is that guy's name? You're gonna have to remind me. Um, the cop in Crivets.
Oh, which one? Sklorinsky or
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. The one in
that's
Crivets.
a
The
DCI.
second. The second part.
The
The
DCI
second part.
agent
The
is
DCI. Right. And it's that interview starts off by Brendan telling the truth. I don't know anything. And then despite the fact, just like in his coerced confession, the guy doesn't really raise his voice. The guy just is confrontational with Brendan, and Brendan, in my mind, is just completely non-confrontational. He's like anti-confrontational. He'll say whatever he needs to get people to stop, to get people out of his face. That in my mind is Brendan. And so, what does the guy say? You had to have seen her. Now, there's no way you didn't see her. So, what does he end up saying by the end by the end of the interview? By the end of the interview, he's saying, "Oh yeah, Blaine and I had to step out of the driveway so she could leave in the Rav, right?" And that's exactly what he says. We have that on tape. But in my mind, that's where it starts. Okay, and this is all. And when it comes time, when they need somebody to come through for them, what do? They lock him. They lock him in a room for several hours with Wiegert and Fassbender, who badger him into saying whatever the fuck they want because they knew they could do it starting in November 6th. I think that is the first reason why they targeted him, right? And what you started to talk about, I think, was why did they need that? And that starts to go with Stephen wanting to get out of jail. And if we one of these times we'll make a coherent video out of this. But you can look at the phone calls. That's the jail calls, and very very critical jail call. Steve is talking to Dolores, and what do they talk about? Oh, there's a woman who just got who I believe was a murder suspect who just got her bail, and she did it via property bond. And that gives Steve that I think the first time the property bond is discussed is around the beginning of February. In Steve in the phone call records that I've seen. I might be wrong about that. Like I said, I'm going to try and refresh this. And Bill, Billy, and I will make a joint video on this where we actually go through, play the calls for you and everything. Um, but they say, okay, she is out, and she got out, and they made a specific note. Stephen talks to Dolores. She got out on a property bond, right? She's a murder suspect out on a property bond.
well, it's a
And
state statute here in Wisconsin. You can use property for your bail.
yeah, and the only reason Stephen wasn't getting out was because he couldn't make bail. He had a bail set, and he couldn't make it. Right? It was I think 750,000 if I'm not mistaken, something along those lines, and he just couldn't raise the money to make it. A cash bail in Wisconsin, and cash bail means you put up the cash. Right? There's no in other states you only have to put up some percentage of the actual bail. And if you run, you'd be charged with the full bail amount, but you only have to put up a fraction of the bail to get out. So, but in Wisconsin, it's all of it. So
There's
Stephen needs
also
that money.
stipulations like when you're granted the bail, you have to be under a supervised watch. You have to agree to a whole bunch of things too.
Yeah. So they and we know from Ken Kratz's book, read it, that that motherfucker, he claims that he's listened to hours of jail calls. He was listening in on those jail calls. There's no doubt. It's been a lot of videos have been put out about how like the sweat, for example, between the sweatiness of Stephen came from one of the phone calls. So they're listening in on these phone calls. There's no doubt about it. And through the phone calls, as we start off, they decide to go for the property bond in the first place. Kratz fights them every step of the way, to the point where they say that the Avery salvage yard is contaminated. They get they have to get a geologist or something like that to actually run a soil sample to say that the soil sample is clean, and that it's not going to be that it is indeed worth the value that they say it is. It's not some massive cleanup site or something like that. And the bond is proceeding. And meanwhile, the hearing, this is right around also the time that Dean Strang takes over for Stephen. And Stephen on another call is talking to Dolores, and he relays what Dean Strang had said to him, which is he doesn't see any reason why Willis wouldn't accept it, because it's a viable means. They get excited because they hear this on the news that this woman got out on a property bond. So this is a perfectly viable way to get out. And so we're going on, they're proceeding. Stephen's date keeps on getting pushed a little bit to the right for various reasons. I think he actually went to he might have actually went into it's at this time he went into the hospital for his surgery around late February.
Yep.
Time frame. And we come to this point where Alan Avery has the property bond signed, and Stephen's hearing is. I'm not going to know the dates exactly because I don't have the phone call data right in front of me. Something along the lines of March 6th, 7th, 9th, something along those lines, where he can actually present the property bond. And Kratz has been fighting them every step of the way. But a funny thing happens on the way to March 7th, doesn't it? Or that funny thing happens, very, very shortly before that. And what is that thing?
Well, you got to go back. Well, they already knew that Stephen was attempting to bail himself out with the property, so they were looking for anything else they could possibly charge him with.
Right.
So that's why they went after Marie for him allegedly raping her. That didn't work, so they went after Jody. They tried getting Jody to say anything about him, tried to even implicate that he had something to do with the Blazer being burned in 2004.
All right.
Which is not true. And then you got to remember that Dean Strang was not Stephen's lawyer yet. He applied for him to become his lawyer, and Kratz tried to stop that too, but the judge had already signed off on him becoming his lawyer. So they were desperate. They had their last resort, and that was Brendan Dassey. The fact that they interviewed him several times before that March 1st interview is key. And the fact that they don't have any information on what took place at the Fox Hills. The only person that really knows is Wiegert, Fassbender, and Brendan.
Who's probably forgot by now. I mean, he's been through so much. He went through so much in that short amount of time. I wouldn't be surprised if that's even hazy to him after all these years. To me, you know what I mean? So that's just ridiculous. We need booze when we talk about Brendan. Who's going to join us out there for a drink?
I'm drinking water.
Yeah. So, um, so what is actually the lame excuse that they use to talk to Brendan in the first place? So don't they actually? I'm trying to remember if in the book they say they sort of re-interview everybody, right? Why do they need to do that? Well, Stephen's bond is coming up, and they know he's going to get it unless they can find something, right? The something. Don't forget that the something that they need to do is be able to add another charge to increase the amount of bail, so that he can't afford it anymore, right? That's the real thing going on here, and that's exactly what Kratz did is he trumped up the charges with three more charges that were added because of Brendan. Now every single one of them was eventually dropped at the main trial because they didn't have sufficient evidence to support it. So that just tells you, that just tells you exactly what's happening here, which is Brendan was the victim of the state's failing case against Stephen, right? That's exactly what's going on here. They needed somebody. Brendan, they knew he would confess to the Lindbergh kidnapping, but they didn't need him to confess to that. They needed him to confess to something else, right? And that was the rape and murder of Teresa Hallback, which he got all those details wrong in multiple ways, right? The first way he got them wrong was he wanted to say that she was shot outside, right? But that was very inconvenient because there was too much snow on the ground to find a planted FL inside the garage. So I'd say, no, Brendan, we don't believe that. We don't believe that she was shot outside in the garage. Oh yeah, that's more believable. Now you're talking about a story that we can believe, right? So that's just as you think about the sequence of things, it's essential to think about the bond and the fact that he's going to get out. What could he have done if he got out? You know what I mean? He could have proved himself innocent. He could have had interviews on the Avery salvage yard. Look how much this place is torn up. They didn't find a lick of forensic evidence in this torn up trailer, right? They said she was shackled to the bed, literally shackled to the bed. No straight marks on the bed, no blood in the room. Brendan said he cut her throat. Well, where's all the blood? Where did it all go? You can't clean that amount of shit up. Stephen could have walked him in here. They spent how long searching this trailer? The trailer is less than 1,000 square feet, right? Less than 1,000 square feet. Figure out how much that is,
November 5th into the 12th, and then they came back in March.
So to me, it's very, very clear why they needed Brendan, and it's all about they needed that false confession. They knew he would do it based upon their interaction with him way back on November 6th. For the people who've suffered the pain of listening through the confession, including Judge Wood, right, who's one of the judges on the 3-judge panel, that exonerated Brendan in the second appeal of the state at the federal level. She said, oh no, everything that Brendan confessed to, the state said first, right? That was her. The state put it in his mind and sort of extracted it at a later point in the confession.
The most telling thing for me is when Mark Wiegert asked Brendan Dassey one simple question: how did you get home from school? You should have been like, from the school bus. He doesn't answer that. He goes on a detailed scenario what took place, to the point where Mark Wiegert has to stop him and say, hold on, back up. He asked him how you got home from school and you confessed to a murder. This is after they already talked to him at school. This is when they bring him to the Rivers Police Department. And whatever happened to those 2 interviews, they all watched him, and then they went to interviewed the other members of the family.
So to me, it's very, very clear that there's so many cues here. You know what I mean? Including from the one you just mentioned, to what happens in the interview itself, to the fact that we don't have the 2 Rivers Department recording, right? Even though they'd been trained to be able to
The
use
Fox
this
Hills,
equipment.
yeah. Fassbender was trained to use the equipment that they had got months before. The whole state of Wisconsin, they got all new recording equipment because the state of Wisconsin made it a law that juveniles need to be recorded.
Right.
Why weren't his? I don't know. It just bothered me a lot.
And one of the lines in the main tape that we all listen to that bothers me a lot is when Wiegert says, all the what do you say, the rough stuff? The rough stuff was yesterday, or the rough stuff was the other day. The tape that we don't have. That's very telling. What did they do? I don't think it was necessarily physical, but they were in his face.
Well,
right?
that's like
And
there's interviews Stephen Avery's picked up on November 9th. We have Fassbender's submitting audio tapes. They recorded Stephen from when they arrested him at Earl's house all the way to the hospital, and then from the hospital to the police department. And from what I hear, they're being real nasty to him. Real nasty.
Oh, yeah.
But they won't release that audio.
So why Brendan? I think we know why Brendan, right? Because they're reasonably sure that he was going to give the answer that they needed, and they needed it because Stephen Avery was going to walk on the property bond, and if he had walked on the property bond, they wouldn't have been able to march him in front of the media in his orange jumpsuit with his shackles on. Right, which is something that they wanted to be able to do in the trial desperately. And they were also garnering what they thought was a lot of intelligence because of the phone calls themselves. Right? They were very happy that Stephen was so prolific on the phone. They felt like they were gathering a lot of information. And at the end of the day, that's what they used to go. That's why they went after Jody, right? Because they were aware of his relationship with her, that it was clearly, after he had been in jail for so many months, that relationship started to go into the tank like you'd expect any relationship would, and start to have trouble. So what do? They start to go to Jody and they play her phone calls of Stephen talking to Debbie Klemp, right? That were, had a lot of innuendo involved in those phone calls. They made a lot of hay out of those phone calls. It was very good to have Stephen in there. You could tell how, really how bad it was for the family, and how Stephen's incarceration was really just driving a wedge in between different family members when even before Brendan was arrested, there was a lot of fighting and Stephen not being happy that Earl and that Candy was on TV. And
the thing that really bothered me is the rumors that one of the Dassey boys was suicidal.
Yeah, I heard it was Bobby. It was the rumor I heard.
You hear it in the jail calls.
Yeah, that's right. You do hear the jail calls.
It's not a rumor.
I've forgotten about that. Yeah, why? a lot of reasons to ask. So there's a lot of information in those jail calls. I think. To me, they tell the story, and this story, the way it progresses, with the property bonds, to Brendan's confession, to miraculously finding a bullet that they couldn't find in so many hours in the garage. How long did they search the garage for?
That's another thing. While they're interviewing Brendan Dassey at the Two Rivers Police Department on March 1st, they have Wendy Baldwin. It's in the officer sign in sound out records. She goes to the Avery property while they're interviewing Brendan. And then they all meet up at the Hickory Hills storage unit. And then they pounce on the Avery property. So what was she doing there before and why?
Yeah. Right. Good question. So you're saying it might not be Link that brought in the FL with the when he brought in the sandwiches.
Well, makes you wonder why Wendy Baldwin had such a falling out with the sheriff's department.
Yeah. Well, there's also the story about Wendy Baldwin and the Band-Aid, right? Wendy goes to Brendan says Stephen cut his finger, and they ask, well, what did Stephen put on his finger? And of course, we all know, knowing Stephen, he either put A, nothing on it, or B, duct tape on it, right? Which is more like what an auto mechanic or somebody who doesn't have any money to spend on Band-Aids would do. But they actually go and they take off the seat of the RAV4. What do you think they find under the seat? A Band-Aid. That was never brought up in court. But isn't that shocking?
They were looking for the knife that Brendan said he put there.
But they found a Band-Aid. What a shocking coincidence that they'd find a Band-Aid after Brendan said Stephen put a Band-Aid and they wonder whether it was going to fall off. But they didn't find as if a knife, right? As if a knife would evade a month. They had the RAV there as of the night of the morning of the 6th, the night of the 5th of November, right? And it's March, and they can't find a fucking knife, right? That's how incompetent these boots
What's
are.
so preposterous is they actually document that they went to go look for the knife. Didn't you guys process the whole vehicle 3 months earlier?
Right.
I mean,
and how long did they spend searching the garage? Right. I remember Coburn, I think, signed into the garage search for like 4 hours on the 8th.
The 5th. They were only in the garage for maybe 10 minutes. Remaker was accounted, but the subsequent days later. No, that they should have found, if the key was there like they say it was, they should have found it on the 6th.
In the bedroom. Yeah,
yes.
in the bedroom. I'm talking about the garage search in FL. I mean, to me, my conversion to Stephen being innocent was no doubt that it was, for me, it's item FL that makes me a truther. I 100% believe that once you believe one thing is planted, then it's easy to believe that everything is planted. It's impossible to me that they didn't find item FL, which should have been right under the air conditioner, or the air compressor. I mean, right? They should have found that, and it's incomprehensible that bullet came from anywhere else, and that they didn't find it in the main search. They were looking for bullets. FK I can see, right? It was pounded flat and it was in a crack. That one I can give a pass to. But FL and the condition that it was in, sitting right under the air compressor, no chance on earth. And then, in the confession, oh no, Brendan, it wasn't outside. We need to go search the garage, right? It wasn't. I mean, it's just so contrived.
They both fuck up too, because they forget about them starting the fire in that March 1st interview. They're like, oh, wait a minute. Was the fire already burning?
Yeah.
Oops, right. We forgot about that part.
And then there's the part about the screams here. The people like to think about that trailer, the Gilters, that it's some type of remote, thing off to the end. But look how many, there's like Grand Central Station on Halloween, right? Barb was by twice, right? She left and then she came back. Scott Tadich was there. Earl and Robert Fabian were there. Any one of the other Dassey brothers, there were 4 of them living at the house.
That's the thing. I believe that when people testified in Stephen's trial, they were telling the truth about what happened. They were just recalling a day it didn't. Just like the bus driver. There's no way she could have seen Teresa Halbach at the Avery's house in the driveway from the cul-de-sac at the dead end at the end of Avery Road. No way in hell.
Different day.
He's recalling a different day. Everybody is, even Robert Fabian.
Yeah, Robert Fabian couldn't even recall what day he was at the Avery salvage yard, right? It had to be either Candy or Robert's wife is the one that pointed out that it was actually Monday, the day that Earl picked up his glasses and everything. They whether or not, because it's just another day to them, right? Rabbit hunting. But they didn't hear any screams. Nobody said anything. All of a sudden, and when the cops get to you, all of a sudden, you have these great recollections, and when they put the pressure on you, then they get you to say what they want because they have stuff over you, right?
Just the fact that Calumet called Manitowoc for their assistance, and they didn't document anything that happened on the 3rd whatsoever until 8 months later.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that we have no information of what took place on the 4th at all from the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department is mind-boggling.
Yes, it is.
It's also Stephen's lawyer's fault because he only asked for what Remacher used to prepare for his testimony. He should have asked for all audio that they had.
He should have, yeah.
I mean,
Muting, I remember
Fassbender
in the pre-trial.
putting the Veely CD away for so long. What else did they put away?
Yep.
The fact that they don't do reports is a huge red flag. It's supposed to be standard protocol. Supposed to document.
Yeah, using.
I mean, they even
using
have to
the excuse.
They even have
Calumet's case.
They even have to document their gas mileage every day. They have to radio in what the gas mileage is when they get in the car and when they're done with their shift.
Yeah. Well, so that's why, Brendan. We got through a little faster than I kind of expected, but it's how much more obvious can you get? I mean, that's really the thing. The leading commentary, and FL, the discovery of FL. I just can't get past that. After the searches of the garage, I think Coburn was in there for 4 hours one day, if I'm not mistaken. How do you miss it? It's on.
That would have been on March 1st and March 2nd. And you see the video. You see the video from March 1st. They got there probably around 4 or something. It was already getting dark. And then you see the video from the next day. They tore that whole place up. Even the house.
Yeah.
They just didn't fuck with the garage. They tore the whole house apart too.
Yep.
Didn't find it in the house. Brutal murder happened. Slit her throat, stabbed her in the stomach, strangled her. Doesn't make any sense.
They jackhammered all that concrete, right? Because they thought that according to the false confession, that blood was all over the floor. Brendan didn't mention anything about a tarp, right? Which is Ken Kratt's ridiculous theory, bulletproof tarp. Just the condition of item FL, which is a hollow point bullet, right? Hollow point bullet. I actually, have recently got my own gun license and gun. And learned about hollow point bullets in the classes that I took. I was, when I was going through this and talking to people like Andrew before, but I didn't really have any education at all. But those hollow point bullets really deform when they hit something. It's just not comprehensible that this hollow point bullet went all the way through Teresa Hallback to get some of her DNA on it, and then just ended up sitting there. The truth. Some of the guilters like to say that it got embedded in the wall and fell out of that wall when they jackhammered for the concrete. That's a ludicrous argument because that's not what would happen to a hollow point. As it went in, the head would expand and it would sort of get wedged in from the other side. It doesn't make any sense. That argument, especially
not to mention a hollow point would go right through the garage.
Yeah.
Not be embedded in the wood like a 22 would.
Yeah. So I mean, just the argument itself is ludicrous as to how that thing ended up there. So I just that's for me the key piece of evidence that makes me believe in the innocence of both of these, particularly Brandon. Just because they had to maneuver his confession to be able to do what they wanted to do, which is falsely plant that evidence, which Ken Kratz labeled the game changer. And I like to say, right, you don't need a game changer in a game that's going well.
Like the press conference, there's no need for that.
Right. Yeah, we talked about that last night, right? How to use the media, to turn the court of public opinion against you. And once the court of public opinion is against somebody, it doesn't matter what you do to them. It doesn't matter how many times you violate their constitutional rights. It's okay because those people are assholes. To draw another political connection, right? Take a look at the January 6th rioters, right? No matter how you feel about January 6th, I think most of us feel like it was, it was a dark day in American history. It shouldn't have happened, and I don't know anybody that's proud of it. But that being said, there's people who have been in jail in solitary confinement for since last January. That's a long time, and most of those people for trumped up trespassing charge. Because not all of them were, these great conspirators trying to overthrow an election. Some of them were just morons who got waved in to the Capitol by Capitol police officers. Check it out; the video's there. But because we don't like these people, because of what they did and the spectacle that the media, appropriately or not, made out of January 6th, we're okay with them, right? And it's not okay to be in favor of infringing on constitutional rights, because that's the nature of exactly what Ken Kratz did to Avery, right? I regret the press conference. I never should have done it. He needed to do it, right? He needed to turn the court of public opinion against him, particularly in case there was blowback about the property bond, about anything. He needed people to say, this guy's obviously guilty. We have this confession, pools of blood. Basically, a lot of stuff he said in that press conference was BS. But he played the court of public opinion very well. And I think the people who are watching this video probably understand that about more than anybody, just because, they believe in the innocence, particularly of Brenton.
Well, it's what the jury didn't see in both cases. If the jury had seen the whole confession, may have changed their opinion.
Yep. See Barberman at the end?
Recants everything.
Yep.
I got in my head. You're just telling him he had no clue what he was saying. I mean, he had the audacity to ask, "Can I go back to school?" After you just confessed to this brutal thing. He had no idea what was going on.
He had no idea what he was saying. Yeah. I got this project in 7th period that I got to deliver. Right. Can I go now? For how long? Like a day?
Yeah. I've watched that interview too many times.
Yeah. It's a shameful thing. It really is. Fassbender, if you ever watch this, I hope you're proud that your interview with Brendan is now on the list of how not to do an interview especially to mentally challenged, juvenile. That's how they hold it up. You can pin all the medals on yourself that you want, you Uyghur, but you're a shining example that they use of how not to do things. You should be proud of that. Not everybody can do things that badly, that they actually make the list of how not to do it, and they're the prime example held up. So congratulations on that, assholes.
Like I said, this is just like a precursor of what we're going to go over next. So we're going to go break this down into more detail, play the audio.
Yep.
And yeah, but thank y'all for joining us, and see y'all next week.